Good day. We know this, I think, intuitively, that the ideal person does not exist. Although we have all been looking for the ideal spouse, the ideal child, the ideal teacher, the ideal plumber, the ideal executive. We are always looking for the ideal. Isn't that part of our human nature, to look for the perfection? And we're constantly looking for it and disappointed we don't get it. We don't get it. I think an enlightenment is finally to realize it does not exist. It doesn't exist. There is one reason why it doesn't exist, most important reason, because of change. What is ideal at one situation is not necessarily ideal in the next situation, so it changes. Somebody told me once that if you have a problem in your marriage, just wait 2 days. What does it really mean? It will change. So it was so terrible today, 2 days from now it's not so terrible. And by the way, by the same token, if you're too happy, don't hold your breath either. It's up and down. Life is change. Change is life. And nothing is perfect. Now I would like to give a model to explain why this perfect does not exist. Change is an interesting explanation, but it's not good enough to get into the depth of it and to understand it much deeper. Let's focus on the business world right now rather than a personal life. Why the ideal executive does not exist. Although we have been looking for him or her, we have been paying enormous amounts of money to attract them. We have been spending billions of dollars to train them. And those that we believe are ideal is only because we don't know them closely. Talk to the people that know them very closely and they're going to say, yes, but he or she has some issues or some problems or some deficiencies that whoever is writing about them didn't know about. So how come so many books are being written about what an executive should be and they're describing something that doesn't exist? And the reason is that when we write books about what we should be, we look for the best traits that we can find in different people, and then we do a collage. What we are describing, what should be, is not any single individual. It's a collage of many individuals that we took the best traits of them and we put it together to describe what the best executive should be. The problem is that that person does not exist. It cannot exist, and it is why it cannot exist. In another segment in this program, I have been talking about what is management and said management is to make the organization to be effective and efficient in the short and in the long run, for which 4 roles of management are necessary to be performed. You need to provide for the needs, which makes you effective. You need to administer, which makes your organization efficient. You need to be entrepreneurial, which makes the organization effective in the long run. And you need to integrate, which will make the organization to be efficient in the long run. What I did not tell you at that segment is, I did say that the roles are incompatible, but I didn't explain why. And now I would like to explain why the roles are incompatible. And that's why the perfect executive does not exist, because the roles that that executive has to perform are in conflict with each other at any point in time. I repeat, at point in time. Over time, you can do all the roles. I, for instance, I'm a P when I wash my car. Don't interrupt or wash the dishes. I just go, start and end, and that's it. I'm an A in my office. I administer. I want to see everything to be absolutely perfect. Pay attention to the details. I'm an E with my clients, giving new ideas, new directions, with my methodology, creative. And I'm I with my children. Try to integrate them, to listen to them, to be aware of them and their needs. But I cannot be a PAEI at the same time on every subject. Too much to expect. Too much to expect. By the way, that's why, see, our mind is like a computer. If you have only so much capacity in that computer to process information, and you have a bigger task to do, what are you going to do? You need a bigger computer. Or you go to a network of computers, right? Which communicate with each other. That's what you do. When you have a problem that is bigger than you can handle yourself, what do? You go to somebody who's going to disagree with you. What are you actually doing? You're taking part of your memory, part of your brain that was occupied with that subject that was bugging you within your own head, and now you say to somebody else, why don't you do that so I can expand my mind on the subject that I believe why yes to do, and you tell me why not to do. And then when we disagree with the other person, we're getting upset with that person. You know why? We just transferred the conflict we had within our own head, between our own ears. Now we have it with the other person. We're actually not disagreeing with the other person. We are disagreeing with ourselves. What we could not do with our head, we are doing with the other person. You're really making like another computer. You're expanding your brain power to be able to deal with the issue. As long as the computers talk to each other. As long as we can communicate, which is another segment in this program, how to communicate with each other, which I'm not getting into it right now. But let's go back to the ideal executive. Why one head cannot handle it all? It's too much to expect. Why? Because the roles are incompatible. Let me show you the incompatibility. Here are the roles. Let's start with the first incompatibility. The one that most people recognize right away is P and E are incompatible. Let's do it with the first issue. How P undermines E. What is P? P is right now. That's why some people say I have so much to do, I have not enough time to think about changing. I don't have enough time to think. And as a matter of fact, people that don't want to change, you know what they do? They get very busy. They have a good explanation. So if you have a bad marriage, what do? You get to be a workaholic. You work all the time, so you don't have to think about your marriage. So I'm so busy, I have no time to change. That's why people say, if you're working so hard, how come you're not rich? Why? Because I'm not working smarter, I'm working harder. I'm working so hard, I have no time to change. I have no energy to change. I'm too busy doing. P will undermine E. And the reverse is also true, which is example of number 2. E will undermine P. How will that be? We are changing. And we are changing so much, people have no time to do. That's why people in production will be upset with the people in engineering, and they will say, hey guys, if you guys don't stop changing the product and its parameters and the design, we'll never get it done. Stop the change so we can get it done. That's why we have to be very careful in organizational structure to be sure that they are parallel, they're not on the top of each other. If E is over P, E is going to burn the P down. It's like an engine that turns so fast and so many times it finally burns out. And if P is over E, there will be no change. It will suffocate it. You need them parallel. Parallel, and somebody is managing the transition here. There is another one. P and A are in conflict. Let's go over this conflict now. How does P undermine A? I'm so busy doing that I have no time to get organized. Here are some applications. If you are going to learn to train in any sports, let's say tennis, the trainer should tell you, don't start competing prematurely. Why? Because as you're competing prematurely, you're going to be programming yourself erroneously. You'll do your A badly. Learn first how to do it right, then compete. You see, P will undermine A. That's why many companies, young companies, are disorganized. They're so busy doing, they don't have time to systematize, to organize, and to make it efficient. And A can undermine P. How? I'm learning tennis, and I'm learning how to do it perfect. Boy, am I learning how to do it perfect. Now I'm so perfect, what do I say? Bring me the ball here. I don't want to go there because that's where I'm the most perfect. That's how bureaucracies operate. They are so efficient that they cannot be effective. They're just going through the motions. Efficiency can undermine your effectiveness. A can undermine P. And the same thing here. A can undermine E. We are so organized, so efficient. Don't make any changes. Don't go there. Repeat it here. Repeat it here. Change will undermine efficiency. And efficiency will not allow change. Do you see that? Now let's go to the next one. A and I are incompatible as well. That's a little bit more difficult to see, but let me explain that. A and I are interchangeable tools for integration. The A is a way that integrates is mechanistically, by the book, by the rules. Here is how we're going to do it, who does it with whom, how and when and why. Period. There is a standard operating procedure. You have no discretion. I is interpersonal. You adapt, you think, you judge, you have a discretion. It comes from the inside. It doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the inside. In a primitive society, conflicts are resolved through the I. There are values of the society. The elders of the society will listen and make a decision. But as the society becomes more and more modern and more organized, what happens? Now we have rules and laws, and you get judged by their laws, and you can get exonerated because of some technicality. You might escape judgment because of technicality. Why? Because A is system. There is no judgment here. You just check the book and adapt and apply the rules of the book. Now look what's happening. The more A would you have, the less I would you have. That's what's happening in modern society. As the government and its rules and laws are getting involved in more and more details, what's happening? They're even deciding what to do within the family, what to do with the children, what to do between the spouses. The more and more involvement of the rules, the less discretion do we have in making our own decisions. So A will undermine I. I will undermine A. The more I you have, the less A you need. Example. Which society is very strong on I? Was. And it was its competitive advantage, as a matter of fact, in the world economy. The Japanese. To realize that have you ever seen the Japanese disagreeing with you kind of violently? They even disagree with you and you don't even know it. You watch a meeting of a Japanese, they're watching each other and they just go together like a school of fish. They go together. They're very, very eye-oriented. All the time exchanging presents and bowing and recognizing each other. There is a tremendous amount of mutual respect and trust. I is very high. That's why the number of lawyers per capita in Japan is one of the lowest. A is down. It's not as necessary because I can do the job that A needs to do in a Western society. So when we go to Japan to negotiate, we come with lawyers and they consider that as unnecessary. They want to feel that they can trust you and respect you and work together with you. That's the Eastern way of philosophy. Then we can make an agreement, but the agreement is the end of it. Here, because we are not trusting each other, we want to have everything written up in detail, hundreds of pages of agreements. So I undermines A undermines I. By the way, years ago, when Japan was #1, and everybody was talking about how wonderful Japan is in dominating the world, as I said, it is a way to undermine the Japanese advantage. Let's export our management theory to Japan. That will kill them. Let's export A. A will undermine I. And by the way, that's what also happened there. As it became more and more modern, open to the Western world, and it became more and more administration-oriented, and a big bureaucracy and governmental involvement became bureaucratized, I is starting to decline in China, in Japan. And as it's declining in Japan, it's impacting, they never had been a very big E to start with because of their education system, who teaches you how to know and not how to create and how to learn. Obviously, both of them were low. It became a very efficient society, and eventually it lost its competitive advantage because it was not as innovative and adaptive as it should have been. E and I are incompatible as well, that you can see as well. The creative people walk by their own or dance by their own music. They're called deviates. They hate those meetings where everybody agrees. They always look for what to disagree about. So I can suffocate E, and E can undermine I, the group work. Basically, this is all incompatible. So what do we want, and what are we going to do? Well, what are we expecting from an executive? We are expecting this person to be task-oriented, result-oriented, achiever, doer. At the same time, he has to be organized, efficient, systematic, and thorough. At the same time, the person has to be charismatic, leader, creative, risk-taker, and at the same time, he's building a team and making himself dispensable. What's the problem? Not too many like us left around, right? This person does not exist. Why? Because their roles are incompatible. We are asking a person to do too much at the same time. He can do it over time, he can change over time, and a good executive is capable of doing all the roles at a different point in time. But at any point in time, we need all the 4 roles to be performed. Thus, you need a complementary team. You cannot be an ideal executive no matter how hard you try. Because ideal is a perfection that none of us can achieve. So what do you need? There was a book written many years ago called Denial of Death. And that author says, he was a psychiatrist, says that people that deny death have difficulty enjoying life. Why? Because they're spending all their life doing what? Building a monument to themselves, which is going to survive their death. Thus, they're not going to die, because that monument stays behind them. Those people just invest all their life in denying their death. And the psychiatrist in that book says the way to start enjoying life is to say, I just died. I'm going to die. I don't care what happens after me. Now, let me enjoy life. The same thing I'm saying to you as executives. You're going to start managing well the day you admit you cannot manage. The day you admit your deficiencies because you're not perfect, and you cannot be perfect. No matter how many courses you take, and no matter how much you get paid to be perfect, you cannot be perfect by definition. You have to be a thumb. You have to work with others that complement you, and by creating the complementary team, you can create a perfection, although you personally do not possess it. Thank you very much.